Washington, D.C. July 2nd. The sky above the Capitol was low and colorless, the kind of muted gray that bleeds into marble and memory. 2 stories below the dome, beneath the pomp, beneath the press, a hallway hummed like a frayed nerve. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead, casting a clinical glow onto the stone floor. The air was still, too still. This wasn't just another basement in the Capitol. It was the edge of something, an execution chamber without blood. Mike Johnson walked slowly through the narrow corridor, his polished shoes echoing against the marble with metronomic certainty. Every step landed like punctuation. He wasn't a man approaching deliberation. He was walking toward detonation. Beyond a secure door marked "No entry without clearance," 5 men waited. No aides. No security detail. No phones. No minutes taken. Just 5 MAGA loyalists seated at a long, scarred table. They didn't speak. They didn't look up. At the center of the table lay a black binder. No seal, no summary, no author. Only a white sticker on its spine read: D4, Independence Execution. Johnson didn't sit. He placed his hands on either side of the binder like he was about to pray or perform surgery. "We're not here to read it," he said, his voice flat. "We're here to get it passed." One of the younger men, maybe too new to understand the tone, asked carefully. "Sir, the timing. Why July 4th? Johnson tapped his gold Rolex, its face glinting beneath the lights. On the inner band, an inscription. Loyalty above law. A gift from Trump himself. Because that's when Trump wants it signed. Independence Day. Independence from Obamacare. Someone in the corner chuckled darkly. Independence from poor people. No one laughed. No one disagreed. No one opened the binder. They didn't need to. They already knew what was inside. They just didn't want it on the record. This wasn't lawmaking. It was liquidation. 300 miles north, in a modest news studio in the Bronx, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was mid-sentence. Her posture was firm, her tone focused. "If we don't act now, our climate goals." A hand entered the frame, her aide. Urgent. Silent. Holding out a phone. They had rehearsed for weeks. Not the arguments. Not the debate. The optics. A narrow room just off the Senate floor buzzed with preparation, not policy. Cameras tested angles. Staffers whispered cue cards. The podium was measured, not for height, but for how it would frame a man who hadn't read a single page of what he was about to defend. By the time the red light blinked on for C-SPAN, the room looked as American as apple pie, flags draped, a modest seal of the Senate glinting behind the microphones, and at its center, Mike Johnson, flanked by silence wearing a suit. But what they didn't expect was that outside the frame, just beyond the lighting grid and rehearsed nods, history was writing itself live, unedited, and uninvited. It began with a whisper in a hallway. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez didn't need a marching band or a televised address. All she needed was a question and a podium. That podium stood at the edge of a Senate corridor now thick with media lenses. Her voice cut through the air like a scalpel. "Have you read it?" No preamble. No softening. Markwayne Mullen blinked. "We're confident." She interrupted. "That's not what I asked." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was charged. As if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Reporters leaned forward. The CNN boom mic trembled as Manu Raju mouthed, "We've got something." Behind her, her staffer nodded. "Senator," she said again, eyes steady. "Would you sign a mortgage without reading the loan terms?" He smiled thinly. "We trust leadership." AOC didn't blink. Then maybe leadership should learn to read. Within 12 minutes, the clip had been viewed over 800,000 times on X. Within an hour, MSNBC interrupted scheduled coverage to air it. Hashtags multiplied like wildfire, hashtag did you read it, hashtag who signed this, and the most damning of all, hashtag read or resign. Inside the Capitol, the mood shifted. Not publicly. Publicly, they still smirked, still postured. But behind the closed mahogany doors of the GOP leadership office, the heat was rising. Not from rage, but from recognition. They hadn't planned on a spotlight. They'd planned for shadows. Back in Boston, Elizabeth Warren was piecing together something far more sinister. Sitting in a secure briefing room beneath the East Data Center, she loaded another document into the forensic scanner, this time, not just legislation, but the original source files provided by Jonathan Packer. Match, 92% identical phrasing. Private proposal. Not authored by Senate aides, not even by policy experts. Written by a healthcare consulting firm with ties to private equity and prison health contracts. Warren adjusted her glasses, whispered, "This isn't a bill. This is a ledger." She fired the findings to one contact, Obama. In Chicago, a study stood silent. Dark oak panels. No music. No security detail. Just Barack Obama reading by lamplight. He didn't look surprised as the findings scrolled across his tablet. He looked tired. Not from lack of sleep, but from clarity. From the kind of knowledge that corrodes optimism. He dialed one number. "Elizabeth," he said, "we were wrong. They're not ignoring the law. They're laundering pain through it." Meanwhile, the Senate hearing room at Dirksen Office Building stood quiet. Not empty, quiet. The kind of quiet before a piano string breaks. They thought they had days to pass the bill. They had hours. CNN ran a new poll, 68% of Americans opposed the legislation once they learned what was inside. And yet, not one GOP senator could name the page that cut Medicaid for disabled children. Susan Collins felt her stomach twist as a staffer handed her a printout. Page 611. Veteran housing, eliminated. She looked at Lisa Murkowski. "We can't back this." Murkowski replied without looking up, "If we don't kill it now, it'll wear our names forever." AOC wasn't waiting. That night, she live-streamed from her old district hospital in Brooklyn. No script. No advisors. Just a phone. They weren't planning to read it. They were planning to sign away lives. And they chose July 4th, because what better day to end healthcare for millions than the day America celebrates its independence? This wasn't a meeting. It was a funeral rehearsal, without a coffin, without a eulogy, just paperwork. 2 levels below the Capitol dome, in a hallway that buzzed like a dying nerve, Mike Johnson's footsteps rang against the marble. Slow. Deliberate. Not toward deliberation, but detonation. He pushed through a secure door. Inside, 5 men. MAGA loyalists. Already seated. No aides. No press. No minutes. Just power. At the center of the table lay a black binder. No title. No summary. Just a white sticker that read. D4, Independence Execution. Johnson didn't sit. He didn't blink. His hands hovered over the binder like a priest over a sacred relic. "We're not here to read it," he said flatly. "We're here to get it passed." A younger man, maybe too new to know better, broke the silence. "Sir, the speed. Why July 4th? Johnson didn't raise his voice. He simply glanced at his gold Rolex, the one Trump had gifted him, engraved with the words. "Loyalty above law." "Because Trump wants it signed on Independence Day," Johnson answered. A chuckle came from the far corner. Independence from poor people. No one laughed. No one objected. No one opened the binder. They didn't need to. They already knew what it said. They just didn't want it on record. Johnson remembered what Trump had told him the night he was confirmed speaker. "I don't need another suit. I need someone who'll light the match and not flinch when it burns." So they got to work. Not on the text, but on the math. Votes. Timing. Distractions. Not a soul in that room asked what was on page 742, where snap cuts were hidden. No one noticed the line that zeroed out veteran housing. No one asked how many disabled children would lose Medicaid before August. They just asked, "Can we get it through before the fireworks start?" A countdown monitor buzzed in the corner. T-4 days. Above it. Final window to vote, before the country starts looking. And somewhere above their heads, a nation slept, still trusting that someone, somewhere was reading on their behalf. They weren't. Round Pushpin 300 miles north, someone was reading. Not in a war room. Not in leather chairs. Not beneath gold light fixtures. But under bright fluorescent studio lights, Bronx, New York. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez had been mid-broadcast when her aide slid a phone in front of her. One line on the screen. Must read, 4th of July draft. The sender? Daniel Viteri. A quiet, brilliant former intern who now worked deep in the Congressional Budget Office. His message was short. No drama. No editorializing. Just. They're killing Medicaid. Ramming it through before the holiday. No one's watching. But you always said someone has to. She opened the file. 87 pages. Untitled. Unvetted. But deadly. She scrolled, until a name stopped her. Natalie A. Rodriguez. Bronx, New York. 26. Crohn's disease. Medicaid dependent. AOC froze. Not from shock, but recognition. Natalie. The girl from the rally. The one who had stood in a high school gym with an 4 in her arm and said, "Obamacare didn't just save me. It convinced me this country still had a heart." Now. She was a redacted footnote. A budgetary liability. AOC stood. She didn't speak. She simply removed her mic and walked off set. Outside, the Bronx heat pressed like a warning. Patriotic banners whipped against scaffolding. Vendors stacked fireworks like landmines. She didn't see any of it. She saw Natalie. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number she hadn't used in years. When a budget becomes a bullet and silence becomes strategy, the only way to save a nation is to speak the words no one else dares to say. Room 216 of the Dirksen Senate Office Building was rarely the scene of history. It was a place of briefings, policy proposals, minor confirmations. But on July 3 at 9 a.m., it became a battlefield. No banners. No ceremony. Only tension. Cameras were set. Xpan's red light glowed steadily like a pulse. Chairs creaked under the weight of anticipation. Senators filed in, some confident, others looking like they hadn't slept. Staffers stood along the walls with folders full of talking points they hoped they wouldn't need. But no one knew what to expect. Until the side door opened. He wasn't announced. He didn't come with fanfare. Barack Obama entered with a quiet that roared. In his hand was the same binder, 1,428 pages of policy, cut programs, and the hopes of those who wouldn't survive its impact. No greeting. No handshake. Just a slow walk to the microphone and a look around the room that said everything. "I'm not here to campaign," he said, voice steady, clear, unshakable. "I'm here to ask a question." He held up the binder. Who here has actually read this? Silence. Not awkward silence, guilty silence. Mike Johnson didn't raise his eyes. Susan Collins glanced at her phone. Josh Hawley shifted in his seat, scribbling something meaningless on a pad. None of them spoke. Obama didn't wait. Page 247, Medicaid cuts across 17 states. Page 611, termination of veteran housing assistance. Page 802, deletion of medical tax deductions for seniors. These aren't numbers. They are names. They are faces. They are mothers, veterans, children with leukemia. Behind him, visuals were pinned to a corkboard, photos of Maria Castillo and her son Mateo, Carl Bridges and his VA card, Karen Sloan in her wheelchair. AOC stood nearby, her arms folded across a printed copy of the bill, watching every flinch, every blink. Obama stepped back from the mic and said one final thing. You don't need to agree with me. You don't even need to like me. But you do need to read what you sign, because millions of Americans can't. And they're trusting you to read on their behalf. The chamber didn't erupt. It exhaled. For the first time in weeks, MAGA senators weren't loud. They were still. Because nothing is harder to argue with than someone who came prepared, with truth. The leak. That same afternoon, 300 miles away in Boston, at the Government Accountability Office's East Data Center, the air conditioning buzzed above an anonymous package. No fingerprints. No return address. But inside? 3 audio files, a memo, and a digital signature from Jonathan Packer. He was once MAGA's golden boy, a strategist with a talent for repackaging pain as patriotism. Now, his note read. I used to believe I was saving something. Turns out I was just giving cover to kill it. Warren's team scanned the files and distributed them quietly. Tape 1. Mike Johnson's voice. We locked the signature for July 4th. Everyone's distracted by fireworks. Nobody checks legislation during a barbecue.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that move the world. Thanks for watching.